potential. We'll do that today, and then finally we will calculate electrostatic potential energy, which is also because there was a 1 week gap in between. Very quickly we'll recap what electrostatic potential is. So we had discussed earlier, we had found out that using Gauss's divergence theorem, Gauss's law gives us that the divergence of the electric field is basically charge density by epsilon naught. So using that we can, that's the Gauss's divergence theorem in the differential form, and using that we can find the charge distribution or the field at any point. Now we will find out what the curl of the electric field is, and if you remember that we saw that the curl of an electric field is always 0, indicating that an electric field is a conservative field. Okay, and this fact gives us the concept of electrostatic potential. All right, so if we consider a charge placed at the origin, then at a distance r, the electric field is given by this expression. Now if we want to move from one point to another under the effect of this force, this electric field, then we saw that suppose this is the charge placed at the origin. These are its position coordinates, the position coordinates of 2 points A and B with respect to the origin. Want to move from the point A to B under the influence of the field due to this charge Q, we have to calculate the integral A to B E dot dl. Okay. Now we know that E is a function of R and is directed along R. We have discussed this thoroughly throughout before this. And also, if you write down the line element dl in spherical coordinates, then this is the expression. Okay, so if you take the dot product of E and dl, see there is only one common term, r. Okay, there are no other terms in E. There is no theta and there is no phi term. So we are left with E dr. Okay, and the expression of E is q by 4 pi epsilon naught r square. So E dot dl gives us E by 4 pi epsilon q by 4 pi epsilon naught r square into dr. So basically we have to integrate this expression, and integrating it between the points RA and RB will give us this term over here, 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q by RB minus q by RA with a negative sign. So if we start from A and if we come back to A, so if we start from A, go to B and then come back to A, then we see that this is equal to 0, which indicates that if we apply Stokes' theorem, then curl of E is equal to 0. Okay, so this is for your recapitulation. I've written down Stokes' theorem over here. So this shows us that the curl of the electric field is always 0. Now since this is true for a single charge, therefore this will be true for any charge distribution with several discrete charges. So curl of E equal to 0 for all charge distributions, and therefore we can represent the electric field as the gradient of a scalar. We have discussed this thoroughly in our previous class. Okay, I am just repeating it for your recapitulation. So we can say that this force is conservative and irrotational. So the electrostatic force is both conservative and irrotational since its curl is 0, and we may write E equal to minus grad phi, because the conservative force can always be represented as the gradient of a scalar function called the scalar potential. This phi is known as the electrostatic potential. Alright, so if you start moving from a particular reference point at R ref to the present position R, then the integration will give you E dot dr integration R ref to R is basically grad phi dot dr, and that is equal to phi at R ref minus phi at R. Okay, so if you choose the reference point at infinity, where the influence of the electric field will vanish and therefore the potential will become zero, then we are just left with the fact that phi, the electrostatic potential, is equal to minus integration infinity to r E dot dr. Okay? So we can define electrostatic potential at a point as the work done in bringing a unit test charge from infinity to that point. So this you have to learn. What is the definition of electrostatic potential? It is the work done in bringing a unit test charge from infinity to that point. All right. Now this work is stored as electrostatic potential energy in the test charge. So what is electrostatic potential? It is the potential energy per unit charge. So we saw that this is how we take a charge we move from the point A to the point B under the influence of the electric field of the point. So if a unit test charge is moved from A to B, then the change in potential is given by phi at RB minus phi at RA, which is equal to minus integration RB to RA E dot dr. Okay, so this is how we calculate the electrostatic potential difference between 2 points. And we can see that if the test charge is brought back to A from B, okay, so if we move in a loop, we go from A to B and then we come back to the point A. Then using this, we see that in returning, the total change in potential is zero. If we travel around a closed path and return to your initial position, then the total change in potential is zero. So work done in moving a test charge around a closed loop is equal to zero. So the electrostatic force is conservative, irrotational, and these are two very, very important points. Okay, an electrostatic force is a conservative force, it is an irrotational force. So work done in an electrostatic field is always independent of the path, and work done in a closed loop is always zero. Okay, so these are points you must remember when you are talking about an electrostatic field. So we also saw what the units of electrostatic potential are, volts, stat volts, and we also saw what the dimension of electrostatic potential is. I won't repeat. Okay. We also discussed what equipotential surfaces are. The locus of all points having the same potential. The surface of equipotentials are given by phi r equal to constant. Okay. So suppose we have a point charge Q placed at the origin, then at any distance r from the point charge, the electrostatic potential is given by this expression, Q by 4 pi epsilon naught r. So we get spheres of radius r. At any given distance r, phi will be a constant. Okay, so basically you can draw spheres of radius r, which will be equipotential surfaces. Okay, such surfaces are the equipotential surfaces for a particular charge Q placed at the origin. Right? Since E equal to minus grad phi, so grad phi gives you the equipotential surfaces, and that those are always perpendicular at every point to the electric field at that point. Okay, we know that grad phi is always perpendicular to the normal, and we know that electric field direction is radial, and therefore it is always normal to these surfaces. So we can say that equipotential surfaces are perpendicular at every point to the electric field at that point. All right. Now we will calculate the electric potential due to a point charge. Suppose the source charge Q is placed at the origin. Okay, now this has become a known figure for you. Source charge Q, which is placed at the origin of our coordinate system. Now at the point P, which is located at a distance r with respect to the origin, we consider a point P which is located at a distance r with respect to the origin. We know that the electric field is given by 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q by r square, r vector, r cap basically. And we also have just now seen that phi r, the potential, is equal to minus integration infinity to r E dot dr. Okay, so how will you find out the potential? You just put the expression of E. So E is q by 4 pi epsilon naught r square. You put that over here, and dr vector is basically dr r cap. So r cap dot r cap gives you 1. So you are left with minus q by 4 pi epsilon naught integration infinity to r dr by r square. So this integration will give you minus 1 by r. So the minus and minus cancels, and you are left with the expression phi r equal to q by 4 pi epsilon naught r. Okay, so this is the expression of the electrostatic potential due to a point source charge q located at the origin at a distance r from it. Okay, so if you are asked to find out the electrostatic potential due to a point charge q at a distance r from it, then this is how you will calculate the electrostatic potential. Just a very simple integration when you know the expression for the electric field due to a point charge. Okay. Of course, if you are placing the charge at a distance r1 with respect to the origin, okay, if your reference point changes, then instead of r, you just write modulus of r minus r. Now, if you have more than a single charge, then what will you do? Suppose there is not one single charge, but several discrete charges R1, R2, R3, etc. Then we just apply the principle of superposition and get the potential as this. Just sum over all the individual potentials. Okay. So the principle of superposition applies to the electrostatic potential like this. For several point charges, the resultant field we know is obtained by applying principle of superposition, E equal to vector sum of E1 plus E2 plus E3 plus etc. And we know that E is equal to minus grad phi since E is a conservative field, and we just got the relation between electrostatic field and electrostatic potential, E equal to minus grad phi. Okay, so here for each field expression, you can write it corresponding potential expression like this: minus grad phi equal to minus grad phi 1 plus minus grad phi 2 plus minus grad phi 3, etc. Okay, so similarly for continuous charge distribution, we just replace the discrete charges by the corresponding charge distribution. Remember line charge distribution, volume charge distribution, surface charge distribution. And we get the potential like this: lambda dl by r for line charge, sigma ds by r for surface charge, and rho dv by r for volume charge. Okay, so if you are given discrete charges, one single charge, then just 1 by 4 q by 4 pi epsilon naught r. Several charges, then summation of qi by 4 pi epsilon naught ri. And if you are given charge distributions, then you replace the summation by integration and the single charges by the charge distributions, and you can get the electrostatic potential. Okay, so these are the formulae that you need to remember. We will calculate the electrostatic potential of a spherical charge distribution. Okay, this is mentioned in your syllabus: calculation of electrostatic potential due to a spherical charge distribution. So we will consider a uniformly charged sphere of radius r. Remember, we have calculated electric field applying Gauss's law for such a uniformly charged sphere, solid sphere of radius r. Okay, so this is the solid sphere we are talking about, radius r. And we will try to calculate the electrostatic potential at a point P, which is at a distance r from the center. So case 1, we considered the point P to be lying outside the sphere, that is small r is greater than capital R. Now we know that the electric field at this point, we have done this using Gauss's law, you have to go through those notes. This value is E equal to q by 4 pi epsilon naught r square r cap. But we also just now saw that E is equal to minus grad phi, so that we can write, in place of E, we write q by 4 pi epsilon naught r square r cap. And grad phi, since we have only one direction r, so instead of grad phi we write minus d phi dr r cap. Okay, since E equal to er r cap. So phi r is equal to minus q by 4 pi epsilon naught integration dr r square. Dr by r square. Okay, from this d phi is equal to this into dr. So phi is equal to q by 4 pi epsilon naught integration dr by r square, and the negative goes. So integrating you get q by 4 pi epsilon naught r plus c, where c is the constant of integration. Now how will we find the constant of integration? We know that at r tends to infinity, phi tends to 0. So putting that boundary condition, you get c, the constant of integration, equal to 0. So we get the potential at a point P at a distance r, which is lying outside the charged solid sphere, is given by q by 4 pi epsilon naught r. Now let us consider the case where the point P lies inside the sphere. See, P is now inside the sphere. So R is less than capital R. And we know that E is equal to minus grad phi. That we have to keep in mind. Now, electric field at the point P, again I am using the result that we have obtained from Gauss's theorem of electrostatics, which we had, if you remember, those who have attended my classes, we have done this elaborately. All the cases of application of Gauss's law we have done elaborately. And if you remember that inside the sphere we had obtained E equal to r rho by 3 epsilon naught into r cap, where rho is the volume charge density given by q by 4/3 pi capital R cube, charge per unit volume. Okay, total volume of the sphere is 4/3 pi R cube. Total charge on the sphere is q, so volume charge density rho is given by q by 4/3 pi R cube. Okay, so in place of E, we write here I just substitute the value of rho in terms of q, and we get electric field E as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q r by r cube r cap. Okay, so I just write E in terms of q. But we know that E equal to minus grad phi. So we get QR by 4 pi epsilon naught R cube R cap is equal to d phi dr into R cap. Both are in R direction of R cap. So once again we will get phi by integrating this term over here. So phi is equal to q by 4 pi epsilon naught capital R cube integration R dr. So equal to q by 4 pi epsilon naught capital R cube R squared by 2 plus constant of integration. Okay, we know that the potential. Now how will we find out the constant of integration over here? We know that the potential must be continuous at the boundary r equal to r, right? It cannot be different. We have obtained the value from 0 to r equal to r, and then we have earlier got the result from r equal to r and beyond, when the point lies outside the sphere. But the value of the potential cannot be discontinuous. So at the boundary it must be continuous. So value of potential as r goes from infinity to r, so when you are coming from infinity towards capital R, should be equal to potential as r goes from 0 to capital R. Okay, which means that phi r, we know that phi r is equal to q by 4 pi epsilon naught r when r greater than r, which means that, and we also know that phi r, we just found out that phi r is equal to q by 4 pi epsilon naught r cube into r square by 2 plus c prime. This is the result that I'm using, as r is less than capital R, right? So we have to get these two expressions equal at the boundary. It cannot be discontinuous. So at the boundary, this expression must be equal to this expression, and using some algebra, we get the value of C prime, the constant of integration, to be 3 by 2 q by 4 pi epsilon naught capital R. Right? That value, we get the final expression of potential when you are at a point inside the solid sphere, to be q by 4 pi epsilon naught capital R into 3 by 2 minus small r square by 2 capital R cube. Okay, and I've written it that it is r less than capital R. So if you plot potential against distance from the center for a solid sphere, the curve that you get is behaving like this. Okay, and this is a question that you often get in your exam. Find out the value or derive or calculate the value of the electrostatic potential due to a solid sphere when the point is inside the sphere or outside the sphere, and draw a curve showing the relation between the potential and distance from the center of the sphere. So this is the curve that you need to draw, and the highest value of potential is at r equal to 0. This is the value, and it gradually goes down as 1 by r, and at r equal to small r equal to capital R, at the boundary, phi r is q by 4 pi epsilon naught capital R. Okay, so this is what you have to learn, and as you move further away, then potential decreases inversely as you go further and further, proportional to 1 by r. Okay, so please go through this problem. I have done each and every step. What you need to do, if you want to really understand what I have done, it is possible that you don't follow all the algebra on a PowerPoint presentation. So for those who really want to learn this, or those who really want to understand this, it is your job to sit with a pen and a paper and follow the steps that I have given and write down each step so that you understand what is happening, and then finally arrive at this graph. What is the highest value? What is the value at the boundary, that is exactly at the surface of the sphere, and then how it decreases as you go further and further. For homework, I want you to do this problem. We have already evaluated using thorough calculation in class the value of the electric field for a spherical shell, both thin and thick spherical shell. Okay, so the problem is like this: using the expression of electric field evaluated using Gauss's law, and the fact that electric field is equal to minus grad phi, you need to find out the electrostatic potential at a distance r from the center of a thin spherical shell and a thick spherical shell. So exactly how we have done the problem right now in class for the solid sphere, using the same steps, only the expressions will change. You need to use the expressions for electric field for a thin spherical shell or a thick spherical shell, and then follow the exact steps like this one to find the potential. Okay, please try this out, these two problems. These are part of your syllabus, but since I have done one thoroughly, I want you to try out the other two by yourself. If you face any problem in finding out the values, then please notify me in the other class, and then I'll do it. Now next, sorry about this, this will come later on. The last thing that we are going to calculate today or learn about today is work and energy in electrostatics. We saw that there is a force which is due to the electric field whenever there is a point charge or a distribution of charges, and you need to work. There is work to be done in moving under the influence of an electric field, and we saw that the force is conservative and irrotational, and there is a particular potential, scalar potential associated like mechanical forces, which we call the electrostatic potential here. So obviously there is some energy that is stored as potential energy in an electric field. Okay, so we have to now calculate the work and energy in electrostatics related to charge distributions. Now, what is the work done to move a point charge? Considered a stationary configuration of source. There are several source charges which are all stationary, not moving. Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, etc. up to Qi. Okay, so there can be 5, 10, 100, 1000 charges, all discrete charges. Now, what we want to do is we want to calculate the work done if you want to move a test charge capital Q from any point A to any point B in the vicinity of these source charges. So these source charges have created a field around them. We want to calculate the work done if you want to move a separate charge capital Q under the influence of these charges, in the presence of these charges. Okay, so I take a charge capital Q and I want to take it, say, from a point A to a point B near this discrete body of charges. Okay, now the electrostatic force on Q at any point along the path is given by QE. We have done this earlier, that field is equal to force per unit charge. So force is equal to Q into electric field. And this field, remember, is the resultant field due to the source charges. Okay, so this is the field that is resultant of all the source charges present using the superposition principle. So if you want to do work against this force, then the force that you need to exert is minus QE. QE is the force being exerted by the charges. So if you want to do work against this force, then you have to exert a force minus QE. So work done should be, if you want to move Q from A to B, then the work that you need to do is minus QE, that force, dot dl. Work is always force into displacement. So I have called that force F prime, and so we get minus Q A to B E dot dl. Okay, so minus A to B E dot dl, but E is equal to minus grad phi. Using that, the minus sign goes, therefore we have A to B grad phi dot dl. Okay, again grad phi dot dl is equal to d phi. Here you have to recapitulate your vector differential knowledge. So grad phi dot dl is just d phi, so this is A to B d phi, and this gives us the result phi at B minus phi at A. Okay, so the work done is Q into phi at B minus phi at A. Okay, which means that the work done is independent of the path traversed. We had already learned this, that since the electric field is conservative, therefore the work done under the influence of this electric field is always independent of the path traversed. And here we see that in moving a test charge Q from a point A to a point B, that the work that requires to be done is given by Q into potential at B minus potential at A. Okay, so this is the form. Now we know that electrostatic field is conservative, and we just obtained that W equal to Q into phi B minus phi A, which means phi B minus phi A is equal to W by Q, which means that we get a new definition for potential difference between 2 points. The potential difference between the points A and B is equal to the work done per unit charge to carry a charged particle from the point A to the point B. Okay, so basically potential difference between 2 points is work done per unit charge when you're trying to carry a particular charged particle from A to B. Now let us suppose that the position of B is at R, and we move the position of A to, we move it very far away, infinite distance away. So position of A is infinite. So we can therefore write W is equal to Q into phi r minus phi at infinity. But we know that potential at infinite distance is 0. So we are left with W equal to Q into phi. Thus, potential is potential energy per unit charge, or the work done is the work required to create a system of charges. Okay. So with this knowledge that work done is equal to charge into potential at that point, we calculate the potential energy for an assembly of point charges. Okay. When there are several point charges, what is the work done to create that assembly? That we will need to calculate. And when we have calculated the work done, we know that that is the work that is stored as potential energy. Okay? So, electrostatic energy of an assembly of point charges, which indicates the potential energy of the assembly with respect to the state at which all the point charges were infinitely remote from one another. So how are we calculating with respect to what? When the charges were nowhere near each other, they were infinitely away from each other. From there, they are being brought together to sit near each other. Okay? Then they form a group. Initially, they were all away from each other. Like for example, you were all belonging to different schools, some in this city, some outside this city, some outside this state, and then you all got admission in a particular class in college. So when you are not sitting in college, I know that, but suppose you were going to college, then you were initially you were all from different places, but you were brought together to a particular room inside the college where you are doing the class. Okay, so it is like that. All the charges were initially far away from each other, but we want to calculate the work done when they are one by one brought together to a position where they are near each other and they form an assembly of charges. Okay? And this energy is given by the work required to assemble the charges. Okay? So let us assume that an assembly of charges is being built where charges are brought to their positions of rest from their initial positions. So they were initially at rest and they are brought to positions where they are again at rest. We do not consider any motion of charges. Thoroughly, we are considering static conditions. So, obviously you understand that bringing the first charge Q1 to its position R1 with respect to some origin, that requires no work because there is no field to work against. We just bring in a charge Q1 to its position at R1 with respect to, we have fixed some origin with respect to which we calculate R1, the position of Q1. But bringing in this, so before this there were no charges, it was all empty, right? So bringing in this first charge requires no work because there is no field to work against. So W1 is 0. You can just bring Q1 and keep it at R1 without doing any work because there is nothing there to do work against. But the moment you want to bring in the second charge Q2 to its position R2, then there is already the field due to Q1 that is there. So now you have to work against the field due to the first charge. So only W1 is 0. The moment you want to bring in the second charge, then you have to work against the field due to the first charge. Okay? And this work, as we calculated right now, work is equal to charge into potential. So W2 is equal to Q2 phi 12. You bring in W2 at R2 and the distance between Q1 and Q2 is R21 and this work is equal to Q2 phi 12. Okay, what is phi 12? See, W2 is Q2 into phi 12 is the potential at the position of the second charge Q2 due to the charge Q1. So Q1 by 4 pi epsilon naught R21. We just calculated potential due to a point charge at a certain distance. So potential due to the first charge Q1 at the position of the second charge. So 4 pi epsilon naught distance between the two R21. And we write that as Q2 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 by R21. Okay. So in general, just note that this phi 12, which is Q1 by 4 pi epsilon naught R21, is the potential due to, the notation is very important. Okay. This is the potential due to the charge Q1 at the position of the charge Q2. Okay. So in a general term, phi ij, when I write phi ij, I mean it is the potential due to the charge Qi at the position of the charge Qj. Okay, phi ij means that. This you have to remember. Okay. Now already Q1 and Q2 are there. Now if you want to bring the third charge Q3 to its position R3, then you have to work against what? The combined field of Q1 and Q2. So the more charges that are present, bringing in the next immediate charge requires more work to be done, because you are having to work against the field due to more number of charges. Okay. So bringing in the third charge needs to be done by expending a work against the combined field of the first as well as the second charge. So when you are bringing in Q3 at its position of R3, you need to know its distance from Q1, which is R31, and its distance from Q2, which is R32. And this work is given by Q3, sorry, this will be multiplication. So sorry, just a second. Just a second, I'll make this correction. So work done to bringing the third charge W3 is Q3 into phi 13 plus phi 23. That is potential at the position of Q3 due to the charge Q1 plus potential at the position of Q3 due to the charge Q2. Okay. So using this expression, I can write W2 as Q3 by 4 pi epsilon naught, and inside Q1 by R31 plus Q2 by R32. Okay, following the same notation. Now in this manner, I can bring in any number of charges to assemble them near each other. So one by one in this manner, the work done to bring the jth charge. Okay, before that you have already placed j minus 1 charges. So bringing in the jth charge, you can write down the work done Wj is Qj by 4 pi epsilon naught, Q1 by Rj1 plus Q2 by Rj2 plus etc. Qj minus 1 Rj into j minus 1. Okay. So this is a summation, and the total electrostatic energy of the assembled charges is obtained by summing up each individual work done. Work done in bringing in each charge. So first charge, no work, W1 equal to 0. Second charge, W2. Third charge, W3. In this manner, jth charge, Wj. So total work done W is equal to summation of Wj, where j runs from 1 to n, and you are trying to bring in n charges together. Okay. So we get summation j equal to 1 to n, Qj by 4 pi epsilon naught, and inside bracket we have another summation. Okay. This I represent as the summation I equal to 1 to j minus 1 Qi by Rji. Do you understand this? This summation is representing this term inside the bracket. And this summation is for all the individual works done by each charge. So we have two summations running. If you have done any bit of computer programming, this is like one loop running inside another loop. Okay, I don't know if you know, if any one of you know computer programming, but if you have done a bit of it, and if you have done loops, then it means one loop is running inside another loop. For each I, you go to from I to j minus 1, and then again for each j you go from 1 to n. Okay, so I write finally W as equal to half summation j equal to 1 to n summation I equal to 1 to n prime qj qi by 4 pi epsilon naught r ji, where note that the factor of half here ensures that there is no double counting. Okay, just like I get qj qi, I will also get qi qj, but both mean the same thing. qj qi and qi qj, they give the same contribution, they mean the same work done for the same pair of charges. So if we count them twice, it will give us double the value. So in order to ensure there is no double counting, we have to put a factor of half in front, and this n prime in the second summation. Okay, this ensures that we exclude all j equal to I terms. J equal to I, okay, just a second. We can't include the j equal to I terms because they again would give the same contribution. So we just put a different index over here. All right. Now, potential at the location of the jth charge due to all the other charges can be written as this phi j equal to at the location of the jth charge due to all other charges is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught summation I equal to 1 to n prime qi by rji, which is this term over here. So finally, we can write the electrostatic energy of the system, that is the work done in creating the system, is W equal to half summation j equal to 1 to n qj phi j. So this second summation is nothing but the potential at the position of the jth charge due to all other charges. So we can just replace the second summation like this, and then the expression looks simpler. So W equal to half summation j equal to 1 to n qj phi j. Now, so this is the expression for discrete charges. Okay, but we know that we also have to consider continuous charges. So electrostatic energy for a continuous charge distribution, if you want to find out that, what do you have to do? You have to replace the discrete charges by charge distributions and the summations by integrations. Okay, so the work done becomes this. See, all the summations replaced by integrations, and we have volume charge distribution, surface charge distribution, and line charge distribution. So for simplicity, we will consider only the volume charge distribution, and then we can write W equal to half integration rho phi dv, where rho and phi are both functions of the position coordinate r. Okay. Now we want to simplify this expression to get the final expression of energy, and we recall that the differential form of Gauss's law gives us divergence of E is equal to rho by epsilon naught, which means rho is equal to epsilon naught divergence E. So we replace rho here by this expression here, epsilon naught divergence of E, and W becomes epsilon naught by 2. In place of rho, I write divergence of E and phi d. Then I use the vector identity, which gives us divergence of phi E equal to grad phi dot E plus phi divergence of E. This is just very simple vector identity. Okay. So using that, in this expression over here, okay, so divergence of E into phi is therefore divergence of phi E minus grad phi dot E. Okay, I use that and therefore I'm left with this. Just two different integrals. Okay. Then again, see, this is divergence of phi E. So if you apply Gauss's divergence theorem, divergence of phi E, integration divergence of phi E dv is nothing but integration phi E dot n cap ds, where S is the surface of the enclosed volume V. And we also recall that E is equal to minus grad phi. So finally, in the expression, we have W equal to epsilon naught by 2 integration phi E dot n cap ds. And in the second term, instead of grad phi, I write E and I get integration E square dv. Okay. Now the volume that you're integrating over, that is where the charge is located in reality, you can consider a larger volume as well, because in that extra volume there will be no extra charge that will, right? And if you keep on increasing this volume, then you can I mean, if you want to increase this volume, you can, the minimum necessary volume to trap all the charge, then the integral of E square will keep increasing this if you keep on increasing the volume. Okay. So in that way, the surface must keep decreasing in order that the sum remains intact. You understand what I'm saying? Suppose you have considered a particular volume that encloses a surface that encloses a volume which has volume charge distribution rho, and from that you calculate the work done. Now, if you increase the volume by a certain amount, the extra volume that you include, that does not have new charges. So the result will not change, work done will not change. But since you have increased the volume, therefore this contribution becomes larger. So obviously this contribution must decrease so that the work done value remains constant. So if you keep on increasing the volume of the region, then the surface term will keep on decreasing. So if you take the volume to infinity, and also we know that with distance potential decreases. So as you increase the surface, if you increase the volume infinitely, then at infinite distances the potential will become zero. So this term that contains the potential will become zero if you take the volume to infinitely large, to be infinitely large. Okay. So if you include all available space in the universe, that is, if you make the volume infinitely large, then the contribution of the surface term becomes zero. And then you can write W equal to epsilon by 2 integration E square dv, where this integration extends over all space, not just a finite volume, but over all space. Okay. Then this is the expression of W, and finally, therefore, the energy per unit volume, for that you just need to divide it by the volume and you get potential energy per unit volume as U equal to half epsilon naught E squared. This is a well-known value of electrostatic potential energy, and this is the method in which we arrive at. Okay. So you have to know this value, and this derivation is also part of your syllabus because it is clearly mentioned, electrostatic potential energy per unit volume. So once again, the mathematical steps are not very difficult, but there are a lot of steps. Okay, so you need to go through those steps, and I have not I have not excluded any step of the derivation in the slides. Each and every step and each and every reasoning is given. All right, so you have to go through these slides and take a pen and paper, as I always tell you, sit and just write the steps down yourself, and then you will understand how they follow one from the other. Okay, so that more or less completes one part of our syllabus. There is only one last part left, that is electrostatics in dielectrics. That is in medium, which has epsilon naught, not the value of permittivity is not epsilon naught. So that part only we have to do, which is left, and that we will do next week. Okay, and that will complete our syllabus. Right. So any questions from today's class? Questions might not arise right now, but if you go through the slides later on, then you might have some questions which you might want to ask. All right. So please go through the slides and see that whether you understand the steps or not.